My daughter never calls me dad, and my wife has always been distant and indifferent. In their eyes, I could never compare to the first love who once abandoned them. I never argued, never asked for recognition. I simply stayed by their side in silence. Friends and relatives all thought I knew my place. What they didn't know was I was bound to a companion system. As long as I accompanied them for 7 years, I could return to the real world. And now there are only 5 days left. Congratulations, host, you are about to complete the 7-year companionship mission. In 5 days, you will exit this world and return to life in the real world. When I heard the system's voice, I couldn't hold back my tears of joy because I don't belong in this world. 5 years ago, I was in a car accident in the real world and diagnosed as being in a vegetative state. Even so, I was fully conscious. I could feel my family by my side. My wife and daughter, caring for me day after day, talking to me, hoping I'd wake up to provide me with the best possible care. They sold everything they had. Still, it wasn't enough. Eventually they began borrowing money just to keep me alive. I couldn't bear it. I didn't even know how long I had left, and I had no way to end it myself. I couldn't move a muscle. Then, I was bound to a companion system. The system told Method if I could stay by the side of Samantha Gray, the richest woman in this world, and her child, Ava Sinclair, for 7 years, I could return to the real world and receive enough money to pay off all my family's debts. Of course, on the first day I arrived in this world with the system's help, I approached Samantha Gray. At the time, Samantha was deeply in love with Daniel Wilson. She had defied her family to be with him and was even pregnant. Her grandfather was so furious. He fell ill, and the Gray Group began to collapse. When Daniel Wilson found out, he said heckled and bare to see Samantha fall out with her family because of him. So, he fled overseas. That same day, Samantha went into early labor and had to be rushed to the hospital. That's when I appeared, arranged by the system, Tokarai for Samantha and the newborn Ava as her caregiver. Eventually, I won her trust and married into her family. For 7 years, I worked tirelessly handling everything for Samantha and Ava. Her grandfather passed away. Samantha took over the Gray Group in its most difficult hour. To help her, I stayed up countless nights studying the company's business until I could shoulder its burdens myself. Samantha grew more and more trusting of me, eventually naming vice president, until the day Daniel Wilson returned. In an instant, Samantha and Ava's hearts shifted completely to Daniel. That very day, Samantha handed over the vice president position to him, telling me to just stay home and rest. Relatives, colleagues, everyone laughed at me. They called me a joke, but I didn't care. All I ever wanted was to complete the mission and return to my real family. Now only 5 days remain. That's when Samantha called me. Marriott Hotel Company. Celebration today. Come over. She hung up before I could say a word. Celebration. I doubted it. Ever since Daniel returned and took my position as VP, he's constantly tried to lure me back to the company under the guise of business handovers, only to set traps for me. But it didn't matter. The companion system required me to comply with every request, no matter how unreasonable. Besides, it was only 5 more days. I threw on a coat and left house. When I arrived at the private room in the Marriott, I hadn't even opened the door before I heard voice inside. It was the Gray Group's general manager. Samantha, your Mr. Wilson is finally back after all these years. When will you two tie the knot? Then came Samantha's soft, gentle voice. No rush. Daniel has always had my best interests at heart. 7 years ago, he only left because my family didn't approve of us. He didn't want me to be caught in the middle. Now that my grandfather has passed, the others in my family may still have their reservations. Until that's resolved, Daniel would never want to cause another rift between me and But now that Daniel is vice president of the Gray Group and just secured a major deal, he just needs to show a bit more results, and I think the family won't object anymore. Right after her words, a young voice chimed in. Daddy is so amazing. I bet it won't take long for him to prove himself. The room erupted in laughter. Ava's right. With Mr. Wilson's skills, this will be a piece of cake. Then someone suddenly asked, what about James Miller? The room instantly fell silent. Ava's voice rang out again. James Miller. Isn't he just our housekeeper? Mommy and Dad are getting married? What does that have to do with him? Right after, Samantha spoke again. Back then, I had a child out of wedlock. If word got out, it would have been a scandal in our social circle. It could have even affected the Gray Group stock price. And besides, if it weren't for that, my family would have forced me into an arranged marriage. I had no choice but to find someone who could take care of Ava. Someone I could marry to shut them up. In the end, Ava was right. He's basically just a nanny or a servant. The main thing is, he's obedient. If you tell him to go east, he wouldn't dare go west. Samantha Gray's voice carried a trace of nervousness, as if she was explaining herself, afraid of being misunderstood. As soon as she finished, the room burst into laughter. Ah, so that's how it is. I knew it. James Miller was never a good match for you. Samantha, no way you'd ever choose him. Exactly. How could James Miller ever compare to Vice President Wilson? Still, Ava nailed it. Nanny, that's the perfectable haha. Then someone asked, with a hint of curiosity, is he really that obedient? Another voice quickly chimed in, of course. James Miller's reputation as an S is legendary. Everyone in our circle knows it. Someone else laughed and raised a challenge. Then let me test him. He picked up a bottle of Bayou and filled 8 150 milliliters glasses, nearly 1.5 L of high-proof liquor. I've never met James Miller, but I've heard all about him. I heard he once drank himself into a bleeding stomach just to close a deal for the Gray Group, and ever since he's had hepatitis and can't drink. Samantha, I don't believe it. I want to see if he'd risk his life for you and finish all 8 of these drinks. The crowd erupted again. Now, this is interesting. Let's see if James Miller is really so loyal he'd die for her. But Samantha Gray merely let out a soft chuckle, confidence written all over her face. If I tell him to do it, he won't hesitate. Outside the room, I stood silently. I suppose it was time for me to enter. In a way, this was convenient. If I drank all that, I'd probably end up hospitalized for a few days. At least I wouldn't have to keep answering their every beck and call. I pushed open the door. As I entered, not a single person looked guilty. Instead, the jeering only grew louder. James Miller, you're just in time. One of our partners insists on drinking with Gray's VP. These 8 glasses are for you. We're counting on you. I turned to Samantha Gray and asked calmly, you really want me to drink this? She remained indifferent and nodded nonchalantly. Ava Sinclair chimed in excitedly. Didn't you say you'd do anything for us? Or are you scared of a few drinks? Fine. After all, it's only a few days left. I nodded. Samantha's pulse contracted. What did you just say? I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up each glass, one by one, and downed them all without pause. Instantly, a burning sensation tore through my throat and stomach. Even my mind began to blur, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. Laughter erupted again. Told you, as long as Samantha nods, James Miller will never say no. Samantha, you're something else. I want a husband that obedient. But what does it matter? Samantha's heart belongs to VP Wilson. Anyway, Samantha said nothing. But my earlier words echoed. In her mind, after all, it's only a few days left. She shook her head, her face expressionless. He's just upset because he lost the VP position, she thought. No way he'd actually leave. If he really wanted to leave, why would he still drink? My vision was fading, cold sweat dripping down my back, and my stomach burned like fire. I clenched my jaw and turned to Samantha Gray. There's nothing else, right? She looked at me and casually waved me off. She always did this, summoning me when she pleased, dismissing me just as easily. I staggered out of the room, and the moment I was outside, I couldn't hold ice and more. I rushed into the restroom, retching violently. Then everything went black. When I came to, the first thing I smelled was the strong stench of disinfectant, the unmistakable scent of a hospital. As I opened my eyes, sure enough, I was lying on a hospital bed. I felt a rare sense of relief. At least for the next few days, I'd have some peace. Even Samantha Gray wouldn't be cruel enough to drag me out of a hospital bed. Once I got through this last few days, I'd finally be free. Or so I thought. I turned my head and instantly regretted it. There they were, Samantha Gray, Ava Sinclair, and Daniel Wilson. At that moment, both Samantha and Ava looked at me with disgust, as if I were some vile criminal. James Miller, why did you deliberately ruin Daniel's deal? I froze, not understanding what she meant. Daniel Wilson let out a soft sigh, his face full of sorrow. James Miller probably just doesn't like me, and I get it. I left all those years ago, left Samantha and Ava behind. And James, you were the one who stepped in, cared for them, even married her. Even if the marriage was just a convenient engine at the time, maybe you saw it differently. Maybe you believed that someday you'd truly become her husband. And now that I'm back and took your VP position, I can understand why you'd feel bitter. But Daniel's expression grew heavier, and he sighed again. But James, if you had a problem with me, you could have just said so. Was that real? I spent more than half a month running around exhausting every ounce of effort just to land the contract with Tay Group. I even ended up in the hospital multiple times from drinking at business dinners. And now, just as Gray Group was finally finding its footing again, James Miller, you of all people should not have sabotaged the deal like that. Samantha's worked so hard to hold the company together. It hasn't been easy. If you were truly upset, you could have just said so. I'd have given the vice president position back to you without a fuss. As soon as those exaggerated and words were spoken, Samantha Gray and Ava Sinclair's expressions instantly twisted with rage. Before James Miller could respond, Samantha snapped, "Give it back. That position was always yours. My husband and Ava's father. Only you, Daniel. He's nothing but a servant, and now he dares to play dirty tricks." Her voice was filled with contempt. Ava quickly echoed her mother. "You disgusting servant. Mom only married you so someone could take care of me. And now you think just because you're Married to her, that you're my dad. Even worried when I found you passed out drunk in the bathroom yesterday. Turns out you deserved it. Samantha Gray shot James a cold glance. Know your place. If you pull something like this again, you won't even be allowed to stay by Miss side. With that, she picked up Ava and walked out. Daniel Wilson followed close behind. James silently watched their backs fade from sight, Samantha's words still echoing in his mind. A bitter smile crept onto his lips. Everything was finally clear. Sabotage the deal. What sabotage? Daniel Wilson never secured the contract in the first place. Tearoop was one of the leading in the country, notorious for its rigorous standards and emphasis on product quality. Under Daniel's reckless leadership, how could Gray Group's products possibly still meet those standards? It likely never even made it past their initial review. The name on the supposed contract, probably forged. All just a ploy so Daniel could around with the success, justifying why he deserved the vice president position, then pin the blame on James. When things inevitably fell apart, after all, James had previously handled all dealings with Tay Group. Now that he'd been removed from his position, and after what happened yesterday, it would be easy for others to believe he'd retaliated by calling Tay Group and sabotaging the deal. A story that made perfect sense. Whence James might have tried to explain, he had built Gray Group up from the ground. It wasn't just a job. It was his life's work. He would never want to see its employees suffer, or the company blacklisted in the industry, but now he wasn't the VP anymore. And really, what would an explanation even change? James shook his head. Daniel Wilson's schemes were clumsy and laughable. A single phone call from Samantha to Tay Group would be enough to uncover the truth. But Samantha would never make that call. She would blindly believe every word Daniel said because love, or the lack of it, is always obvious. Otherwise, Daniel wouldn't have been welcomed with open arms and placed at the center of the company so quickly. James glanced at the calendar on his phone. Just 3 more days. 2 days later, James was discharged from the hospital. He had hoped to spend the last 3 days resting there quietly. But on the final day, Samantha Gray called. She wanted him to help move house. Of course, to her, someone who still had the energy to sabotage contracts surely couldn't be that sick from drinking. Letting him rest for 2 days was already the most she would allow, or perhaps she simply hadn't wanted to see him. In these past 2 days, clutching his churning stomach, James returned to the Gray family villa. Outside, a moving truck stood parked. Workers were unloading boxes, placing them near the front door. He stepped inside and saw the scene in the living room. Samantha Gray, Ava Sinclair, and Daniel Wilson chatting and laughing like a perfect little family. As soon as she saw him, Samantha barked, "Move those boxes into your room, then clear out your stuff. Daniel is moving in today." Daniel immediately stood up, pretending concerned. "Should I help? James hasn't fully recovered yet." Before James could say anything, Samantha cut in coldly, "Don't bother, he's fine, probably faking it for sympathy. It was just a bit of alcohol. It's not like he hasn't handled worse before." James said nothing. Clearly, Samantha was using this task to put him in his place. After all, the moving company was only responsible for bringing the boxers in. Why resist? Quietly, he walked back out and began hauling the boxers. His body felt like it might give out at any moment. Several times, he nearly vomited, but he forced himself to keep going. If he stopped now, he'd only be accused of slacking or hear Daniel's mocking voice again. Might as well finish quickly. Once the boxers were inside, James began packing his own things. There wasn't much. He had always known he didn't belong here. This world wasn't his. He was here on Lido, complete a mission. This was a job with rewards beyond anything imaginable. After all, what could be more valuable than being brought back to life and reunited with your family? In the room, he gathered a few clothes, some old photos, nothing else. The photos had once been taken at the insistence of Samantha and Ava, who had pulled him into the frame with smiling faces. Now, he tossed them into a garbage bag just like everything else. I headed downstairs and made my way to the backyard. Samantha Gray frowned when she noticed the bag in my hand. "What are you throwing out?" "Just trash," I replied casually. Daniel Wilson walked over with a suspicious look and glanced inside. "It really is just trash," he said. Samantha nodded at his words, and just then her phone rang. She stepped aside to take the call. I continued toward the backyard. Finding an empty spot, I lit a fire and tossed a black bag in. After all, those were my things, and there's no way I'd let my employer keep my clothes after I leave. That's just disgusting. Watching the bag catch fire, I turned away and headed back to the house. The moment I stepped inside, Ava Sinclair was there, hands on her hips. She began ordering me to open each of the boxes that had just arrived and help decorate the villa. Daniel Wilson stood off to the side, wearing a smug smile. Clearly he was. Behind this item object, I opened the boxes and started unpacking Daniel Wilson's belongings, placing them around the house according to Ava's instructions. Before long, the first floor was done. He went upstairs. At that moment, Samantha finished her call. Daniel followed me up immediately, smiling as he said, "James Miller, you've been working so hard, must be exhausted. Here, let me help you." "Don't bother with him," Samantha said coldly, but suddenly, Daniel grabbed my wrist, then hurled himself backward down the staircase. With a dull thud, Daniel crashed to the floor below and passed out. I almost laughed. The stairs were equipped with safety edges and covered in thick carpet. There was no way he could have actually been hurt. Daniel Wilson really had no shortage of tricks, but Samantha immediately panicked. She called the doctor, who lived nearby, and rushed upstairs. Without a word, she slapped me hard across the face, then shoved me violently down the stairs. After dragging me to my knees, she pointed at Daniel's crumpled body. "Kneel, right there." I took a deep breath, then glanced at the clock. Jum sablas lewedli mapulaminit, p.m. almastir. For the sake of going home, for the sake of reunion, I endured it. Ich knelt in front of Daniel Wilson. Just then, Daniel slowly stirred awake. When he saw me kneeling, he looked shocked. "James Miller, why are you kneeling? Get up, please." He even reached out to help him up, but Samantha cut him off. "Leave him there. Let him kneel for 2 days, if that's what it takes for him to learn his lesson." Daniel said anxiously, "That's too much. I'm sure James didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to," Samantha snapped. "I saw it with my own eyes. His hand was outstretched to push you. It was definitely him." She turned to me, eyes blazing. "I let you into this family to take care of Ava because you were obedient and kind. Who would have thought you were such a snake? Look at Daniel. He's the one you pushed. Yet, he's still trying to speak up for you. If you had even 1 ounce of the goodness he has, I wouldn't treat you like this. Someone take him to the confinement room." Daniel quickly grabbed Samantha's hand, trying to calm her. "Samantha, don't be angry. James probably just lost his temper. Jealous that you love me. How about this? I'll take James to the confinement room myself. We'll talk things out." Samantha's eyes flared with fury. "See, even now, Daniel, I still defending you. You go with him quietly. If you ever lay a hand on him again, I won't be so forgiving." I said nothing. I simply followed Daniel Wilson toward the confinement room. As the door slammed shut behind us, I glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:59 p.m. Then Daniel's lips curled into a satisfied grin. He suddenly kicked me hard in the stomach. Pain exploded through me and I collapsed to the floor. He began stomping on me mercilessly, face twisted in a vicious sneer, trying to steal my woman. "My kid, let's see how you like this." He kept beating me. Every blow aimed at places my clothes would cover. No visible bruises. I understood he wanted to provoke me, to push me into snapping, to make me lose control and fight back. If I attacked him in front of Samantha or Ava, I'd only sink further in their eyes. But if he got caught framing me, that would be harder to explain. Even so, I wasn't angry. He wasn't even upset. Instead, I smiled because I heard the system's voice. "Congratulations, host. Companion, mission complete. Would you like to exit the world? Now, once exited, this body will permanently die." I laughed, truly, joyfully. Finally, freedom. And what perfect timing. I couldn't wait to discuss Samantha Gray and Daniel Wilson one last time. Let them turn on each other after I'm gone. That's the best revenge I could ask for. 7 years of this hell had left me sick to my stomach. Exit, I confirmed silently. Daniel paused, disturbed by my sudden laughter. He even took a step back, eyes narrowing. "What the hell, are you crazy?" Then I looked up at him, smiling, and suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. It spilled from my lips uncontrollably. My vision went black and everything faded. At the same moment, Samantha Gray smelled something burning. She followed the scent into the backyard and saw a pile of trash ablaze. Glancing at it absent-mindedly, she turned to leave, but something caught her eye. Her pupils shrank sharply. She rushed over and kicked the burning pile aside only to see half-charred photographs. Photos of me, Samantha, and Ava taken together. They were nearly destroyed. "This is trash." Samantha Gray suddenly recollected I had said earlier, and her expression changed. She quickly strode toward the confinement room. The moment she stepped inside, the stench of blood hit her hard. An overwhelming sense of dread surged in Samantha's heart. She shoved the door open and there I was, lying motionless on the floor, blood pouring from my mouth, complete lifeless. Paid content begins here. Daniel Wilson, completely panicked. He had only meant to teach James Miller a lesson. Maybe provoke him, push him into a rage so he'd lose control and strike back. He never intended to actually kill him. "Samantha, did James Miller have some kind of illness? I swear I just brought him into the confinement room, didn't lay a hand on him, and who suddenly started vomiting blood." He quickly tried to distance himself from the situation. Samantha finally snapped out of her daze, her body instinctively going weak at the knees. She tried to step forward, but when her eyes fell on James Miller, lying in a pool of blood, she froze, too afraid to get closer. "Mom, what are you doing in the confinement room? Let Dad handle James Miller." He's just a servant. After all. Ava Sinclair strolled in, clutching her doll. But the moment she spoke, Samantha Gray turned her head sharply toward her. Her eyes were bloodshot, red, frighteningly red. Even Ava couldn't help but shiver. She hesitantly stepped forward to comfort her mother, but just as she reached the doorway and saw James Miller lying in blood, she froze on what happened to Daddy James? Ava's little body trembled violently. Her heart felt hollow, as if something precious had suddenly been ripped away. She clutched at Samantha's sleeve and kept asking, "Mom, what happened to Daddy?" Just then, the private doctor finally arrived, late and breathless, carrying his medical kit. After a quick search around the villa, he rushed into the confinement room. The moment he saw James Miller's body, he stopped short, shocked, but he quickly composed himself and knelt beside the body, checking for a poozie. Then he lifted James Miller's shirt. Daniel Wilson's face changed instinctively. He opened his mouth to say something, but it was too late. The shirt was pulled back, and James Miller's body was covered in fresh bruises. Red and purple, not yet darkened by time. Clearly, they were recent. The doctor opened James's mouth, swabbed away the blood on his tongue, examined it carefully, then stood up, sighing quietly. He turned to Samantha Gray and shook his head. "Ms. Gray, I'm sorry for your loss. He's dead. He passed about 3 minutes ago. If you'd called me sooner, maybe there would have been a chance." His body was already extremely weak. He suffered severe liver damage, most likely from long-term overconsumption of strong liquor. If he had been resting properly, it might have been manageable, but from the look of his red eyes and swollen lids, he's been sleep-deprived for a long time. Worse, there are signs of recent intense physical activity. His muscles are still twitching, even post-mortem. And with the internal injury sustained on top of that, all within the past half hour, his skin hasn't even started to swell or turn dark. Yet in short, the trauma was too much. The body was already exhausted. It simply gave out. The doctor spoke slowly, gravely, then bowed slightly. "Again, my condolences, Miss Gray." And with that, he turned and hurried out, leaving before Samantha had fully processed, heard, as if he feared staying any longer might get him into trouble. Bang! The sound of the door closing shattered the stillness. Samantha Gray collapsed to the ground. Moments later, she snapped her head up and glared at Daniel Wilson. "You did nothing. Then how do you explain the bruises all over his booty?" Daniel's face twisted. He tried to look wronged, putting on a wounded expression. I didn't do anything. Serious, he came at me first. I just defended myself in the heat of the moment. And didn't the doctor say it, too? His liver was failing. He drank too much. That's the real reason. Above them, in the air, my soul hovered silently in the confinement room. I watched Daniel Wilson putting on his act. It wasn't that I didn't want to leave. It's just the system was still processing the transition back to my original world. Fortunately, my body was completely dead. There was no saving it. Samantha couldn't see me anymore. The mission was complete. No more swallowing my pride. Inside the confinement room, Daniel kept whining, trying to explain himself. But Samantha remained silent. Her face only grew colder. Her eyes, when they landed on him, were full of icy contempt. At that moment, Daniel Wilson snapped. He glared at Samantha and shouted, "What? You're seriously going to throw me into confinement for this outsider? I'm your husband. I'm Ava's father. I was gone for 7 years, and you let someone else take my place. Now I'm back and you won't even divorce him. I don't even get to vent a little longer." His rage slowly faded. Panic started to set in. He quickly softened his tone, trying to salvage the situation. "Samantha, he was just a nobody. You didn't even like him, right? Now that he's gone, I can finally take care of you too." But before he could finish, Ava Sinclair suddenly came back. Herself, her eyes, though, were blank and distant. She didn't fully understand what death meant, but she knew one thing. Her daddy was gone. Death means never seeing that person again. Ava Sinclair couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down her face as she suddenly lunged at Daniel Wilson, furiously pounding on him. Why? Why did you kill Daddy?" Samantha Gray snapped her head up, staring coldly at Daniel Wilson. "So, you really did it," she shouted sharply. "Get in here." Bodyguards swarmed in immediately. Daniel Wilson's face turned pale. "Samantha, are you really going to go after me over this outsider?" Samantha didn't answer, but instead looked to the bodyguards and said, "Take him down." The bodyguards rushed forward and pinned Daniel Wilson. Completely losing it, Daniel shouted angrily at Samantha. "Ha! The guy wasn't dead. You didn't know how to appreciate him and kept targeting him. Now that he's dead, you regret it and it's really my fault he died." "I don't think so. James Miller died because of you. That night at the party, you knew damn well he was sick and couldn't drink. But when everyone was egging him on, did you stop them? No, you didn't just watch. You actively pushed James Miller to drink. All that. 8 rounds of strong liquor, totaling over 3 gin, and he downed it all in one go. Any normal person could have died from alcohol poisoning, not to mention James Miller's already weak condition. and he was barely out of the hospital 2 days before you called him back. I only kicked him a few times. That alone wouldn't kill him. It's all your fault he died. Daniel then glanced at Ava Sinclair, who was still pounding her own leg in distress, and sneered, "And you think I killed your father? Ha, I'm your real father, a user like him. So what if I killed him? Besides, the one who killed him wasn't me. It was your mother and yourself. You were the loudest one, egging everyone on. You're the one who said James Miller wasn't your dad, who called him a nanny. You're one of the culprits who killed James Miller. If you loved him so much, why won't you admit he's your dad? Why call him a nanny? Now that he's dead, you regret it. You two really are cut from the same cloth." No, that's not true." Ava Sinclair collapsed to the floor, shaken by Daniel's words. She kept shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. "That's not true. I never disliked Daddy. I've always loved him. I loved when Daddy held me, stroked my head, and told me bedtime stories. It's Mom. Ever since you showed up, Mom's always with you, not Daddy anymore. Even when I treated Daddy well, Mom would scold me. Mom kept saying Daddy's not my real father, and that I should get closer to you. I just wanted to make Mom happy. I just didn't want Mom to be angry. I just wanted her praise. So, I kept going along with what she wanted." Ava cried as she spoke. Samantha Gray felt everything go pitch black before her eyes. She staggered and nearly collapsed again, but the bodyguard skeekly steadied her. Seeing this, Daniel Wilson seized the chance to break free and rushed out. They were not only Samantha and Ava's protectors, but had also guarded Daniel Wilson before. Without Samantha's order, they dared not act rashly. Samantha Gray fainted completely. Above, I watched the scene with amusement. When I was alive, this is how they treated me, calling me around to do their bidding, then tossing me aside. Even a casual joke was enough to drag me into torment. Now that I'm dead, they're suddenly putting on a show in front of my corpse. Suddenly realizing Daniel Wilson was the culprit and ignoring all the earlier signs. Halabubble, they really are a perfect match. Two rotten souls. No wonder they ended up together. But regret. I doubt Samantha Gray feels that way about me. She's probably just panicking over the sudden death of this body. When Samantha Gray came to again, it was the next morning. She rushed to the confinement room and saw my corpse once more. She almost fainted again, but managed to steady herself against the wall. I found it ironic. Still not over it. At that moment, her phone rang. Samantha answered numbly. Urgent voices came through the line. "The Tay Group's head is here. There are serious quality issues with the last batch of products submitted. They want compensation for breach of contract and to publicly expose Gray Group, effectively blacklisting us in the entire industry. Manager Gray, what should we do?" Her vision blurred again. She took a deep breath and said, "Compensate, even overcompensate if needed, as long as we calm their anger and prevent exposure." Listening to the call, I everything. I was responsible for the previous TE contract and products. I knew how strict Tay was about quality. That's why I kept a close eye on the manufacturers. Never pushing for speed, only quality. Tay had always been satisfied with that. Because of this, the cooperation between TI Group and Gray Group had always been smooth. Moreover, T Group was massive, accounting for a full 30% of Gray Group's total profits. You could even say that Gray Group's revival was largely thanks to Tay Group. Until 2 months ago, when Daniel Wilson returned to the country and replaced me as vice president of Gray Group. The Factos product quality Madi took a serious nose dive, and the batch in question was the very last quarterly shipment for Tay Group. Everything had been fine before, because Tay hadn't started using those products yet. But once they did, problems emerged instantly, leading to the current crisis. Perfect timing, really. The Gray Group that I had painstakingly kept. Now that I'm gone, it's destined to collapse. At this moment, Samantha Gray finally grasped the problem. Or rather, she had been unwilling to believe it before, but now doubts crept in. She immediately called to investigate every move Daniel Wilson had made since returning to the country. Sitting on the sofa, Samantha watched countless surveillance videos, streamed onto her phone, and projected on the TV. First came the footage from the villa's second floor. It clearly showed Daniel Wilson grabbing my hand after Samantha offered, then pretending I had pushed him down the stairs. Then, after Samantha ordered me to kneel, he put on a pitiful act. Next came footage from the confinement room. Daniel Wilson escorted me inside, shut the door, and then kicked me down violently. He vented his rage with blows and curses, threatening to kill me. After that, was Daniel Wilson lounging comfortably in the vice president's office, making calls. The conversations were brazen, discussing collaborations with unscrupulous companies, industry disgrace, and firms blacklisted by Thindustry. He openly demanded massive kickbacks. When the person on the other end asked if Daniel wasn't afraid of getting caught, Daniel casually replied that if exposed, he could easily shift the blame onto me. After all, Samantha Gray would never stop trusting him. Following that was footage from before the party. Samantha hadn't appeared yet. Daniel Wilson was seen gathering his cronies in a private room, plotting their next moves. How to flatter him, how to link him to Samantha Gray, how to deflect blame onto her and my marriage, and how to torment me. Then Spenethoppered, the entire room played out exactly as Daniel planned, pushing me into the corner and forcing me to drink over 3 gin of hard liquor. Samantha Gray and Ava Sinclair's faces grew progressively darker with each ex-surveillance clip, eventually turning so grim it seemed ink could drip from their expressions until finally the two outside the private room. There, I had arrived early and quietly listened to the sneering remarks Samantha and Ava made about me inside the room. Their faces went completely pale. Their eyes betrayed panic and helplessness. It was as if at this moment they realized I had known everything all along, but I simply no longer cared. Or rather, they finally saw that ever since Daniel Wilson's return, they hadn't shown me a single kind look. Not one day until the day I died. Mom, Ava Sinclair looked at Samantha Gray, unable to help herself. Is this the person you like? Is this the father you want me to recognize? Then did you want me to call a bad person my father? Though I didn't go to school much, my teacher taught me a lot. He's definitely a bad person. Mom, why would you rather like a bad man than Daddy? Ava asked tearfully. Samantha Gray's face drained of color. She collapsed onto the sofa, shaking her head repeatedly, struggling to explain. No, that's not true. I didn't. I was just deceived by Daniel Wilson. I never wanted to treat James Miller like that, she babbled frantically, as if explaining to her daughter, but more like pleading with her own heart. Ava looked at her confusedly and asked, deceived. But Mom, one sentence from you could have cleared everything up. And now you have all these surveillance videos in your hands, but before this, you never listened to Dad's explanations. And when Dad stopped explaining, you stopped believing him, too. Her words struck Samantha Gray like a hammer, and she fainted again. When she woke again, Samantha Gray seemed to have gone slightly mad. She murmured incomprehensible words now and then, besides calling around to search Thesity for Daniel Wilson. Daily, she didn't even manage the company anymore. She stayed in the confinement room all day, staring blankly at my corpse. By now, my body had started to rot and stink. But Samantha Gray pretended not to notice, as if through my corpse she was watching the still living me or recounting memories of us together. Several times she reached out, wanting to touch me, but always stopped an inch away, as if feeling unworthy to touch my body, even as a soul. This made me feel disgusted. Fortunately, I had already burned everything related to me in the villa to ashes. Otherwise, Samantha Gray might have really ended up holding my clothes, staring at my corpse. That would have been utterly disgusting. 3 days later, Daniel Wilson was caught. He was locked in the confinement room, tied up, forced to kneel right in front of my body. On the first day, Daniel Wilson kept defending himself. Samantha, Ava, I didn't kill James Miller. It really wasn't me. Samantha, Ava, are you really going to torture me to death over an outsider? Samantha, Ava, I'm hungry. Can you spare me a bite to eat? By the third day, he started begging for mercy. Samantha, I was wrong. Please spare me. Even just one bite of food, even if I'm guilty, let the law judge me. By the fourth day, Daniel Wilson had completely lost it. Though starving and struggling to breathe, he knew Samantha Gray would never let him go. He shouted hoarsely, raging. What? You want to torture me to death? Torture me to death. And what then? Will James Miller come back to life? You didn't cherish him when he was alive. Now you're putting on an ace here. You're the most hateful. I pity James Miller. How did he end up liking a woman like you? If he had been with any other woman with his abilities and talents, he could have lived so much better. But because of you, he was destroyed. Haha, you two will never truly be loved in this lifetime. With that, Daniel Wilson fainted and never woke. Again, Samantha Gray remained silent the whole time until Daniel Wilson's final words echoed in her mind. Her body trembled violently. Suddenly, she looked up sharply. No, James Miller isn't dead yet. James Miller, no shit's going on. That night, James Miller said it was only a matter of days. He knew everything all along. James Miller isn't dead. Samantha Gray jumped up, rushed out, and frantically made calls, searching for all sorts of mystics and miracle workers. I frowned quickly. I checked with the system. Samantha Gray won't really find me, right? No, there's no such mystic in the world. It's just your words that planted this paranoid idea in Samantha Gray's mind. Hearing this, infinitely breathed a sigh of relief. I never wanted to see Samantha Gray again. Just then, the system's voice rang out again. Process complete. Host, the space-time portal is open. You may now return to your world. Joy surged through me. I saw the portal before me and stepped through without hesitation. I woke up in the hospital bed. My parents wept tears of joy. Years later, the system contacted me again, endlessly updating me on Samantha Gray's situation. After I returned to the original world, Samantha Gray had completely lost her mind. She obsessed over finding miracle workers, ignoring her company entirely. Plus, the scandal of Daniel Wilson's kickbacks came to light. Within a year, Gray Group declared bankruptcy. Samantha Gray had no money left to hire help. She spent her days squatting in the confinement room until creditors, cam-looking, found Samantha Gray and the corpse in the confinement room and called the police to arrest her. In her later years, the system finally told Samantha Gray the truth. I never really liked her. I stayed with her only to complete the mission to return to the original world and reunite with my wife and children. At that moment, Samantha Gray lost her last shred of sanity.